to another edition of Chieftain Prep Rally. I'm Jeff Letofsky, along with Jeff Bursch, better known as Jeff Squared. We have a lot of exciting news to pass along, obviously after a great weekend this past weekend, Jeff, where we saw the South Colts win their first state football championship. The school's been open 59 years. It was the 15th state championship for Pueblo, fourth in a row. Central has won 6, Centennial's won 3, East has won 3. We have to include Rye in there because they're a Pueblo County school. Pueblo West has won 1, and now South Colts have won 1, and they finally made the list.
Yeah, it was an exciting game up there at Sports Authority Field in Denver. We talked last week about what South needed to do to win, and they went out and did exactly kind of what we talked about. They went out and did exactly what they had done all year, and that was, hit big plays. They hit a couple early, got up 13-0 in the first quarter, and they seemed like they were in complete control of that game from that point forward.
Yeah, and we talked about really that South the key for them was defense, and I thought that was really the key to the game because they came out early, made a statement, got stops on 3 of the first 4 possessions. Well, actually, forced punts, and then stopped them on 4th down on another possession. So they set the tone early. The defense did. The offense struck quickly, got a couple touchdowns early, got the lead, and then it got a little hairy there in the third quarter.
Yeah, there were some big plays obviously by South. Pine Creek got within 13-7, and Thomas Panunzio returns a kickoff 93 yards for a touchdown, which obviously gave the momentum back to South. And in the fourth quarter, then when Pine Creek got within 19-14, South put together a huge long 5-minute drive that put them up 25-14 there, about 5 minutes left in the game, and really sealed it and sealed that championship for them. But back to what you were saying about the defense, they were incredible, and that was a big question mark even as the season progressed, is how was South going to react defensively when they saw some of the better teams, because frankly their conference schedule wasn't real strong until they saw Ponderosa, and they dominated that game. But then Ponderosa lost in the opening round of the playoffs, so you were wondering just how good they might be. Yeah. But they gave up 7 points to Montrose, and they gave up 14 to Broomfield, and one of those was a late fourth quarter touchdown. And they same thing up at Vista Ridge. They gave up 14, and again one of those was late. So against Pine Creek, they went out, they shut down David Moore III, who we talked about being a very special running back.
65 yards is shutting them down. But
well, no, they didn't give up the big plays.
They didn't give up the big plays, that's exactly right.
Yeah, and he had a run there in the first half. It got him in position to score. They had 1st and goal at the 7, and he dropped a snap. But they ended up 3rd and long and missed a field goal. That was another key play in that game. But yeah, defense, bend and don't break, I think, is what we talked about most of the year.
Yeah, we had, and of course I wrote about that in the Chieftain, along with everything. I thought we covered the game as well as we could cover it. But the defense is really, it's a defense that sort of got confidence as the year went on, even though they weren't playing against great teams and great offenses. They felt that they were good, even though the record of the teams they were playing weren't good. But as the season went on, you sometimes get confidence regardless of who you're playing, and they felt they were a good defense, and then they proved it, in the playoffs, and they gave up a lot of yards in that game, and they gave up a lot of yards all year. I mean, they gave
up 300 to Montrose,
right? And they weren't the type of team that was going to shut you down the entire game. And they were, you're capable of moving the ball a little bit against them, but when it got close to the red zone, they were pretty good about stopping them. So that was a key thing. And the other thing we talked about, Jeff, was special teams. And you just mentioned the Panunzio return. I mean, that was the backbreaker, I think, in the game, because it really, you sort of had a feeling that Pine Creek was sort of getting back into the game. They were working their way back. They were starting to moving the ball a little bit more consistently on offense. And all of a sudden, they scored. They cut it within a 1-score game, and then bang, just on the kickoff, one play, and then all of a sudden, everybody in the South stands. You could feel, a sense of relief, because now we have a 2-touchdown lead, and they got back in control.
Yeah, and the missed extra points obviously didn't end up costing South, but you had to wonder
during doing that all year. Yeah, like you said, they've done everything they did all year.
And it did cost them against Pueblo West, but not in this one. But yeah, that return was huge. I think we you talked about it. That was his 4th return or something for a touchdown this year, whether it be a punt or kickoff. But their special teams were special all year, and they didn't have to have. I remember a game earlier this year where they didn't have the ball in the second quarter, but I think it was against East, and they had a kickoff return and a punt return during that time.
Right.
And
so the same thing happened
in the third quarter
we
against
looked
Pine
at
Creek.
the clock and I got
2 minutes left or something.
Over 2 minutes.
Yeah, and that was the first play from scrimmage in the second half. And but I wanted to talk a little bit about Marcel Barbie in that game, and I've talked about him all year, but he was truly special in that one. 8 catches, 199 yards, the 67-yard touchdown in the first half really got them going. Just kind of what were your thoughts of seeing him on the big stage?
Yeah, the thing that surprised me, we talked a couple of weeks ago about Broomfield and how they really tried to defense Barbie, and they double teamed, triple teamed him to put a lot of people on his side of the field, prevent him from they weren't not going to allow him to beat them. And usually that's what teams do.
Right.
You see mostly at the next level, college level, pro level, and you see that from defenses that, hey, we're not going to let this guy beat us. Probably more in the NBA, I think, than anything. Maybe even in baseball, you see it. Yeah. We're not going to pitch to this guy. We're gonna pitch around this guy. I mean, you should have pitched around Marcel Barbie because they tried to single him up and go man to man, and really there might be maybe a handful of people in the state that could cover Marcel Barbie, but those guys play on the 5A level.
They weren't on Pine Creek's team.
They weren't on Pine Creek's team. So, and not only that, not only is he impressive on the offensive end, but defensively, he was a special player all year on both sides of the ball. And, it's nice to have a guy that 6'3", 200 pounds back there in your secondary that can move like he can break up passes, can intercept passes. He had a couple interceptions during the course of the year, and then come up and make some big hits. And he was the kind of guy that you just love having on your team.
Yeah, he had a huge hit against Ponderosa that I thought really swung the momentum in that game,
right.
And broke up a fake punt pass that they had that would have picked up a first down. But yeah, he was the real deal everywhere he played, and he had a couple an interception return for a touchdown this year, punt returns. He was great back at safety. That's why you have someone back there.
Yeah. I guess talk about too some of the records that were set.
Yeah,
they weren't set, but they were records that were close to being set
right.
in the state with the South team.
Yeah, Marcel Barbie, who we were just talking about, finished with 23 touchdowns. It's the 3rd most in the state history. I know Ryan Goddard, the coach at South, knew about that record and was trying to get it for him during the playoffs. But we talked about Broomfield double teaming, and that was a tough one for Barbie to get any catches. But Zach Cozzolino, I mean, what can we say about him and the season he had? Quarterback for South, 48 touchdowns. It's the 2nd most in Colorado history. South's offense as a whole had the 3rd most yards in history of Colorado. So. They did some special things, and they went out and won the championship, and obviously that's the most special to them.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of that during the course of a championship run, Jeff. I mean, we've covered championship teams. It's been a while since I got to cover some of the East teams that won it the last 3 years. I was around when Pueblo West won it in 2007. I just started here when Centennial won their 3rd one actually in 1992. And so you get close to those guys, and you get to know a lot of these players and a lot of their families and a lot of the coaches that hung around the team. And you had an opportunity while you traveled with them up to Denver when they went up for the preview before the state game was played, and then you got to go in the locker room afterwards, and then they left the locker room and went out into the parking lot and took a couple pictures, right? So it's just a special time. And not only that, I mean, I was so impressed with the crowd that Pueblo brought. And I was told by some of the Denver people who, I think they've done this, 7 or 8 years at Mile High.
This was the 13th year.
Or 13th year, okay. Well, they said that out of the 13 years, that's the biggest crowd from one school or in one area that they've seen on that side of the stands, because they close the stands. They're not going to open up the it seats 75,000, 76,000, But it was a fabulous crowd, and they were loud,
Yeah.
and we got to be a part of it, and it was an exciting time.
Yeah, being down on the field near the end of the game, you could really sense just how much the crowd was into it and how much they appreciated, what South was about to do, and the players were the same. I mean, as soon as the game was over and the handshakes, they were up in the crowd celebrating, taking selfies. Zach Cozzolino, I don't think, has let go of that trophy yet. He was carrying it everywhere he went, and it was definitely a special time for them.
Yeah, I guess the one thing to wrap it up, we obviously, you're going to have to pick the All-Chieftain team, and that's good. That could be a difficult task. You have to pick an MVP and then the All-Chieftain team, and in my mind, there may be some co-MVPs on for this All-Chieftain team, because there's a couple guys at South that they really had tremendous seasons, and we wanted to congratulate them. And then Ryan Goddard has been named CHSAA Football Coach of the Year, not just in 4A, but the entire Coach of the Year, and that's just another feather in their cap for what they do. So now we're moving on.
Basketball,
winter season, basketball, wrestling, swimming. We're moving on to the next sports season, and hopefully we'll bring home another state champion. And we got a good chance in basketball in both boys and girls, and even the hockey team. Hockey team is they were ranked 11th in the preseason. So
wrestling's real strong.
Wrestling's always been strong. We got a couple state champs and a couple state championship teams that are back. So until next week, this is Jeff Latovsky and Jeff Squares signing off for Chieftain Prep Rally.